Welcome to the Wild Remedies podcast. I'm your host, Krysta, and I'm here to bring you captivating stories from some of the most fascinating people I've connected with on my own journey of physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. So sit back, relax, and get ready to be inspired. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Wild Remedies podcast. We have our first podcast episode where we are bringing back a guest. We have Dr. Kevin Preston back on the podcast today. I'm really psyched. So he's coming in to kind of facilitate my healing journey. So we're basically going to be giving a little update on where I am working with him. This is super important because the work that I'm doing with Kevin is revolutionary. I think that was the name of the first podcast that we did together. It was about revolutionary medicine. It's so different, but it is miraculous. And we go absolutely everywhere in this podcast. It is so fucking fascinating. I swear to God, Kevin is a genius. Everyone that I know that has worked with him has just been like, he's a miracle worker. It's absolutely amazing. And we are at a point in time where people just really need this information. We need to wake up and realize there is another way to heal and that it works. So this episode is more Joe Rogan style. I think it's like an hour and 40 minutes, but like you will not be bored. We touch on so many different subjects. So I give a little update about where I am on my healing journey and the learnings and stuff that I've had along the way. We bring in that homeopathy bit again. So just did an episode with Lisa Strabach on homeopathy. That is what I'm working on in terms of the medicine that I'm using with Kevin's protocol. So we get his kind of download on that. One thing that I really wanted to get out for everybody is in the last episode when we talked about homeopathy, it was all about like these issues that we're starting to have with autoimmunity. It's because we're suppressing symptoms, but I'm like, okay, when we get sick and we get a cold or whatever, like we don't want to just like white knuckle our way through having pain and all of these things. So if we're not supposed to, suppress symptoms with pain relievers such as Tylenol or Advil, like what do we do, right? So Kevin and I chat about that. So there's some really great information there for everybody. We talk about his new course with homeopathy, and then we're diving into COVID and some vaccine stuff. So I believe now is the time to really start talking about the issues, the aftermath that everybody is now seeing from the aftermath of taking these medical interventions. We can't just kind of shove the stuff under the rug anymore. A lot of us knew that what is currently happening was going to happen. And I know for a fact that more and more people every single day are waking up and realizing that they wish they had made a different choice, or they have seen, family members get sick or die, or they themselves are having health challenges. So Kevin and I have a really great conversation about that and what he and some other phenomenal healthcare practitioners are working on to try to remedy some of the damage that has been done there. So there's a lot. We're unpacking a lot in this conversation. But stay tuned till the end because it is absolutely fascinating. So without further ado, let's chat with Kevin for round two.
Hi, I'm Maddie. Let me tell you a quick story of how I'm supporting my PCOS with Wild Remedies Spiced Chocolate Magic Latte. First of all, I'm a registered holistic nutritionist, so I'm investing in finding long-term, sustainable approaches to wellness. Living with PCOS, when things are feeling a little out of balance, it's common for me to wake up groggy, have blood sugar crashes throughout the day, or become totally overwhelmed by daily stressors. My morning coffee was causing blood sugar spikes, anxiety, and tummy trouble, so I swapped it for Wild Remedies Spiced Chocolate Magic Latte about a year ago, and believe me when I tell you that the change has been insane. Each sachet has 3 servings of wild Siberian chaga, a powerful antioxidant-rich adaptogenic mushroom that helps to fight inflammation and fatigue and regulate the immune system. It tastes like a creamy hot chocolate with just a hint of spice, and it keeps my stomach calm. Since swapping, I feel more clarity and calm throughout the day, and my morning Magick latte helps to set clear intentions for the rest of my day. I save 15% on my monthly subscription at wildremediesshop.com, and at $2.50 per serving, it's saving me a ton on Starbucks runs and supplement orders. Check out the links and promos in the show notes to get your own. Your adrenals will thank you.
All right, everybody. We have Dr. Kevin Preston on the Wild Remedies podcast for round 2. So excited to talk to you again tonight, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing lovely today. Great day in the office. And so I feel all primed to talk about all things like health and medicine or wherever you want to go.
Yay! Love to hear it. Good. Well, okay. So today, what I would love to chat with you about. Okay, so as everybody knows, I swear to God, I talk about you on like every podcast now. Like I'm always talking about Kevin and like this healing process that I'm going through, because it's such a divergence in terms of like stuff that I've done in the past. And I really feel like I'm actually on the path to healing all of my shit right now, but it's in a way that is so different from anything that I've ever done before.
Yeah.
And now that I've kind of gone down this path, I'm finding so much incredible information about the stuff that we're doing together. One of those things being homeopathy. Mm-hmm. So I'd love to chat with you a little bit about that. The last interview that I did was with a homeopathic doctor, and it was completely fascinating. And what I'm learning more about it is that even practitioners don't know a lot about how it works. Like it's this really interesting tool that is like, it's kind of like magic. And so it's no wonder that it gets called pseudoscience and all this stuff, right? But I'm sure there's lots of different perspectives. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you've seen it work in lots of different ways. So I just want to keep asking more and more people about it so that we can learn more about it, because I think there's something really magical and special here that we need to draw attention to. So we'll get into that. But the biggest thing that I kind of wanted to have as a theme for this episode is the healing process.
Yes.
And yeah, because I'm in the middle of it right now. I mean, well, fuck, I've been on it for like a decade at this point. But I've been working with you now I'm about to pick up, what is it, remedy number 4 tomorrow?
Yeah, I think that's where we are.
Yeah. So just entering month 4. And it's been really interesting. Like every single time I pick up one of these remedies with the quote unquote pseudoscience bullshit homeopathic stuff in these tinctures that you give me. And again, it's not like, I'm not a full on skeptic. I'm like, this is something that I want to have work, but I don't feel like this is a placebo effect. But every time I pick up one of these remedies for the first 2 weeks, I am like on my ass. Mm-hmm. I've had so many strange things happening to my body. And like, what is going on? It's like I've had everything from, the lymph nodes in my armpits swelling to like debilitating back pain. We've talked about issues with my kidneys. I feel like something's inflamed there. I even had this really interesting experience where I had like a big emotional release. I felt like something was just trying to come up, like emotionally, almost like vomit. This one day I was going for a walk and kind of felt like this thing. I just wanted to come up, and ended up having a bath. This is where I have all of like my emotional breakdowns, is always in the bathtub, and just started. Yes, exactly. Well, literally. So I just started sobbing, and usually I can identify why, like why I'm feeling so emotional, but it was just coming, and I didn't know why. And when I ended up getting out of the tub, I noticed that I had like hives right over my heart. It was almost like stuff was coming right from my heart out through the skin. And it's totally wild. Like what is going on here?
Well, yeah, I'm happy to dive into all of this, because you're describing, I think, what a lot of my patients feel and people I've worked with over the years, that this process that we're in together it is a process together. And, it's your body needing to do this work and wanting to come to a space of health and what I like to call a higher frequency and higher vibration. And so essentially, if we distill everything down, that's what I believe is happening when people are really going through healing. And, they're coming in at a particular frequency and they want to get to a higher frequency. There's a journey between those two spaces, and there's a lot of debris, obstructions, blockages, call it whatever you want, between, point A and point B. So generally what we're doing is I'm helping you chart a path as, a bit of a navigator, and then I'm giving you resources and tools, and you're still the one driving the ship. You're the one that's driving the process, your organs, your tissues, like your detox pathways in the body. But I'm helping illuminate the pathway ahead so that you can see more clearly what it is that's going on inside you. And then the body can actually take steps through that. So this is sometimes why I'll name things, and I'll share bits of information that I observe with your body or that I see in terms of patterning, whether that's like bacterial patterns or viral stuff or parasites, but also life patterning, behavioral and like belief systems that we've adopted that maybe don't serve us anymore. Because what I've noticed is if we create awareness around a particular pattern, then that's half of the battle right there, is just being aware of something. If you're not aware of something, nothing moves. There's no light coming into that area. And what I've also discovered, just life in general, but especially with working on like deep set chronic illness or chronic patterns that are really stubborn or stuck, the areas that are the most dense and the most dark are hiding the most amount of energy, hiding the most amount of light. And so typically I'm going there with patients on multiple levels. And so areas that have had like chronic latent infections deep in the cellular tissue, then we're identifying those things. And then I'm creating these pseudoscience remedies to root that stuff out. And it's such an interesting thing. And, if we want to segue into homeopathy a little bit, a lot of my training was in homotoxicology, which is kind of a fancy way of saying like organ toxicity. So I kind of think along those lines a little bit more in terms of environmental toxins and pathogens that we come across, things that we, pick up just from being human. And when we find pockets of those as a blockage, then I want to understand a whole bunch of things about that. One of them being like, why did this happen in the first place? Why does somebody keep getting recurrent infections in their throat or their gut, or what, maybe it's colitis or it's any kind of inflammatory bowel conditions. There is something that has like triggered an inflammatory response in the body. And I want to get down to the root of that. And so years ago, I thought, oh, this is always pathogen related. Like they got a parasite. But in addition to that, then I thought, well, we can clear that. But like what allowed that into the system in the first place? Just, do we want to chalk it up to bad luck, or they traveled? And you could say any number of things. And the deeper I went and the longer I've been practicing, the more I realized there's always more layers to these things. And especially if I saw recurrent patterns in patients, whether it was mental, emotional, physical, all of the above, there's something in that deeper structure of the energetics of the body that acts like a magnet that keeps pulling these things in because it wants to be seen. So in, maybe 10 years ago, I would help clear all kinds of things, viruses and bacteria and parasites. And sometimes that would sort somebody out totally. And they were super happy. They had better health than they had experienced in, a decade or sometimes longer, many decades. And they were blown away. And sometimes I was blown away of like, this is amazing. Like they're sorted. Some of them though, it'd be like a year later, they'd be like, hey, I'm getting some of this stuff back. I need some more treatment. And I would think, I wish it didn't come back. So what is that? And part of it can be the healing process. You can't clear everything in one go, maybe. But that's where I started being curious, is like trauma, ancestral wounds, family patterning, behaviors, values, like all these different things that maybe we got taught that we are resonating with in previous times of life, but that don't serve us anymore. Then I would see these bits of material coming to the surface to be cleared, but there was always something underneath it. So you mentioned like having a big emotional clearing and purging from the system. Those are often what I'm talking about, where sometimes we know, and I tell patients this when we're doing this deeper work, if you feel an emotion coming up or a whole bunch of emotions, you might know what it's about. You might not know what it's about. And I always trust if you need to know more, you will. Like your intelligence, your memories, anything that's in the system, it'll show you. And if we don't need to know more about it, because I believe sometimes we don't always have to go into every single little detail, everything that sort of created some hurt. Sometimes we need to illuminate it more. And those naturally come forward, like the wisdom of our body, the wisdom of our soul. It'll bring those pieces forward and then you get to work on them. But where we don't have to know exactly what that was, we can just release it and clear and then feel the opening after. And sometimes there's a few layers to one particular element, and it can take a bit of time for that to come forward and surface. And then the body's got to work with it because it doesn't just magically evaporate. In some cases, I've seen that happen, and I love when that happens. I don't always know why that happens, like these miracle healings where somebody's just different within an hour or two. And I can't speak necessarily to like what all the elements are that create that, but I do think it comes back to frequency, that if I'm vibrating at a certain frequency that creates a healing response on other people, then it is the words that I say, it is the energy. Sometimes it's just me sitting there and being present, with you or anybody else that's in the clinic with me. That creates like a resonance field in the body, and anything that is not supportive to your growth in your life and your health, it starts to move. And so people tell me all the time, just even talking, or I'll ask questions, especially when we're doing some of the toxicity testing and we're diving in there, they get hot, they get sweaty, they start feeling uncomfortable, and they're like, what the hell is going on, man? And it's those pieces in the system starting to move because the resonance field is changing just from that space together. So this is not a process that is taught typically as we're growing up. Our parents didn't really learn about a lot of this process, our grandparents. And maybe if you go back far enough, they knew, because they knew how the body actually worked with nature and worked with how it could heal. And somehow we got this notion in the last, 40, 50 years that the body doesn't know better and that we can't heal ourselves and that we need lots of chemical interventions to tell the body what's up. And our body is like, are you kidding me? This evolutionary divine vehicle of light that we have on the planet doesn't have more intelligence than some of the synthetic chemicals that we kind of force into it. And then when we take a lot of that stuff on, your body often has a lot to say, and side effects galore start surfacing and coming up because the body doesn't like it. And it may get a particular symptom relief component for a certain period of time. I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but most of the interventions in a modern medicine way, they're temporary and they're not designed to treat the root cause. And that's just how things are sort of set up in terms of the intention. And so what we're doing, and many other practitioners like me are doing, is getting to the root issue. What is actually there? But there can be multiple layers of a root issue in somebody's system. It's not just, I had a bad week and there's a bunch of stress going on. I was like, hey, let's honor that. That can be great too. But what else is further? What goes back to last year, 3 years ago, 10 years ago, 20? What about your ancestry and how vast we are as human beings, of how many things we can actually carry that often haven't ever seen the light of day in the healing process?
It's interesting. I feel like the story that we've been told is that, before modern medicine, people only lived till 30 years old and everything was complete squalor. And, we all lost our teeth and nutrition was really poor. And, where did that come from? Because if you look at indigenous cultures, that doesn't actually seem to be the case.
Mm-hmm. Well, what I've noticed with modern medicine, let's say, is again, the separation of self, that you, Krysta, cannot heal yourself.
Hmm.
You need all these other things outside of you to maybe get to a place of like symptomatic relief some of the time. And you should just be happy with that. And this is something that I've been seeing for years. I've been practicing 14 years now. And that it definitely, I'm human. I feel frustrated sometimes of like, that is not accurate. That is actually bullshit. Our bodies are so capable, but what we need is resources and tools and time to have that integrate in the system, the right resources and the right tools, and we need support. So if we look at indigenous cultures, that's one of the things I see or read about or talk to elders about: community and
Hmm.
support. And even, pregnancy is a good one in Chinese medicine. They talk about women's health a lot in Chinese medicine, and how to work with that and work with cycles and support pregnancy in healthy ways. And especially after pregnancy, they had a lot of ideas and patterns and rules that they would kind of follow 2000 years ago, that, hey, when a woman gives birth, it's a big deal, and she will often be quite depleted in energy and blood and in chi, like vital source essence, because she just built a human being. And then the community would build herbal tinctures, soups, really healthy nutritious food, would really show up for her and help her regain the essence and the vitality and the chi, the energy, so that she could function really well. And it
Hmm.
was through that support and knowing what to take and when to take it. And, it wasn't just like 3 days. Okay, you're good. I brought you some herbal soup. Now, return to life. It would be months of building and nourishing and being supported. And I think a lot of that support has been lost. It might be within a family, but the work environment, for example,
Go
for
back
a
in
lot
two
of,
weeks.
yeah, like get back at it. What's the big deal? Strap the kid on your back and go. And
Oh,
then that's often championed. And this is the segue into modern medicine and chemical interventions and pharmaceuticals. It's like, if you're sick or have the flu, you're congested, you're not sleeping, take Tylenol. There's like 50 kinds of Tylenol. Just suppress all those symptoms. Don't listen to what your body's doing. Soldier on, get back to work, get back to the gym, do all those things. And so we're completely ignoring like the intelligence of what our body would say is like, I need rest. I need to have a fever for, the next day or two in order to clear and kick this stuff out of the system. And then I'm going to be good. Just give me some time to work with this. But
mhm.
we've been convinced that no, fevers are bad. You don't need to rest. You can still do everything that you want to do. You can still work 50 hours a week and hit the gym and go to soccer practice. Just medicate yourself so that you can do that and you'll be good. And what that does is it just shoves all of this stuff in the body, toxins included, to deeper and deeper levels. And then we wonder why illness happens later on. We wonder why
Mhm.
the immune system starts kind of rebelling in the body. It's because, hey, you've been shoving stuff in the closet in my body for like 20 years. There's no room left. And then it has a big response. It has an
Mhm.
inflammatory reaction. It has allergies come up. It has sensitivities come up because it's responding to the environment because you haven't. You've been
Mhm.
suppressing it. And I don't mean you pointing at you, but the collective us,
Yep.
because
Yep.
we didn't know. That's what we were told.
Mhm.
That's how I grew up too. And no offense to, anybody anywhere that didn't know any better. There's so many
Yeah.
things that I didn't know when I was going through my medical training. And there's still so many things I don't know. And sometimes I cringe even at a lot of the stuff I'm saying now, because 10 years from now, I might look back and like, that Kevin on that podcast at that time, he didn't know anything. He thought he knew some stuff, but he didn't. And that's where there's a lot of humility that can come into this. And so I like to say this term in medicine: my current opinion is this. My current viewpoint is this, because a month from now, I'm not the same person. I'm growing, I'm changing, I'm doing my work all the time as well. Of course, we're going to evolve. Of course, we're going to learn new things. So I like to have fluidity, that right now, here's a lot of my thoughts on this subject. Here's a lot of what I've learned to date. And, if we do a podcast down the road again, I might have a whole bunch of new things to say. But over time, it's been more than a decade. I've seen a lot of this stuff kind of bear fruit. and be pretty consistent that I could rely on and count on how the body's working and how it's healing and guide people from that A to B. And then they're so much better, or they're what I would consider like almost all the way better. They don't have whatever the diagnosed illness was anymore. And
Yeah.
it's really cool to see that that definitely does happen, and it can happen. But I think because a lot of people don't see that, like I don't have my own reality show or anything, and I'm not saying I want that. I think that'd be maybe not as fun, but that I get to see a lot of healing happening all the time. And so it's actually built that neural pathway within my system that I kind of expect that to happen with everybody. And I think even my belief in them and my belief in you and your divinity, your inherent body wisdom that you have, I know that you have everything inside you to heal. And we bring that alive and shine light on these areas that are stealing so much energy from your system. And then as we uncover that, yeah, there's some clearing and there's some detoxing to do, because you're revealing more and more light. And that frequency change, that'll shake a lot of stuff loose in people's systems. And it can look like feeling shitty and tired and moody and clearing. And it's like, what's going on in my body? And it's like, it's healing. But we were never taught that's actually how healing can happen at times. And it doesn't always have to be messy, but it can be when we've had so many things suppress our body's natural intelligence for so long. By the time it's breathing and it has something to say, there's a bit of buildup there. And it's like, okay, now we're going to clear this, and now we're going to clear this, and we're going to clear this stuff out of the heart that was locked in there when we were 7. And any number of things is kind of fair game when we work together. So hopefully that's helpful.
It is. And yeah, it's cool. I mean, like, I think it's just really important for people to understand what the healing process looks like, because what we're currently doing with, the allopathic approach is covering up the symptoms. Let's not feel the pain. And, I like that you mentioned the suppressing of the symptoms, because that's something that I want to talk about. And just to give people like a little bit of context into everything that Kevin just shared and what that looks like in somebody. I've mentioned this my personal process a little bit on previous podcasts, but for anybody who hasn't heard this yet, the way that I pieced this together for myself just over the past few months was, okay, I think most people know who listen to the podcast. Everything for me started with these chronic throat infections. I'd been working with intuitive healers that told me that, well, my guides telling them to me through them, that these throat infections were happening because of suppression of my voice at one point as a child. And I can think back to many, many times where that was true. And, a lot of tough emotions and stuff attached to some of those memories. So that was kind of that energetic thing that kept happening, that kept creating these situations of infection in the throat. Now, these infections happen, and then all my parents knew to do, and this is all anybody really knows at this point, is to kill it with drugs, right? Take the antibiotics, which I took 10, 11, 12 times a year for probably 20 years of my life. So if you can imagine,
many people,
right? Which was so incredibly insane when all of that was validated and we did the testing during that first appointment that I had with you, when you're like, oh, hey, Krysta, I have found layers and layers and layers and layers of strep in your body. And I'm like, really? You don't say. And then now I'm piecing together all these things as to like how all of that is creating like this chronic illness that I've been dealing with for years, that many of us are dealing with, right?
Yeah.
And I had a lot of illumination too with the last conversation that I had on the podcast when, Lisa, who I was interviewing, was talking about like the suppression, right? Of like taking drugs to suppress symptoms and how that drives it further into the body. But what else do we do in some of those situations? Because when we're like, this is a question that I have when it comes to like treating children, or just like even when you are feeling like shit, is like, are we just supposed to like white knuckle through a flu, right? And when I'm sick, I want to be able to rest, and when I'm really stuffed up or I have like a horrible cough and I can't sleep, or like the fever pains are so bad that I'm like sobbing, and maybe that's good to get it out, but it's just hours and hours and hours of pain. Is that just what we're supposed to do? Just like white knuckle and, go through that process for days, weeks, however long it takes? Or like, is there something else that we can be doing that's like not taking Tylenol and Advil? I don't know. Maybe it's homeopathy. I don't know what it is, but I would love to know that for my own personal toolkit moving forward.
Yeah. So great. Well, great comments and great questions. There is so many things that can be done where you don't have to white knuckle it. And this is the interesting thing, is like, not many people that I know were taught a lot of what else to do when they were growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's almost been a hijacking of, no, you need all these other outside interventions to control what your body is actually doing. And that actually turns out to be quite counterproductive in many cases. If somebody has a foot infection and it's getting into gangrene and things like that, that's an issue. And that's where I'd say, hey, you got to get that sorted. Go to the hospital, get some antibiotics. But then for sure, I'd be diving into like, why did this possibly happen in your body? Did you have an injury and you had exposure and didn't clean the wound? Or like, there could be these things. So in ancient China, they would treat that all with herbal medicine. And they knew how to do that because that's what they had available. They'd do acupuncture, they'd put compresses on it, they'd have herbal tinctures, they'd have all these things available. But in North America here, a lot of that wisdom had been lost. And even indigenous cultures in Canada and First Nations and things, it's probably difficult now to find some of the elders or medicine women, medicine men that still carry a lot of that knowledge. And it's kind of cool. Actually, I should say, like, I do see, and even with you and your products, it's like learning about herbal medicine and all these things that we actually have readily available. Pine needle tincture, it's everywhere in the forest here. Mushrooms that grow
White
here.
pillow.
Yeah, there's so many things that they're actually available, but we haven't been taught. It's not in school. It's not in the curriculum. Here's like the common Western herbals that are available in central Okanagan, BC, for fever, for pain, for inflammation, for these 20 or 30 different conditions. And so that's kind of been pulled off the table and replaced with all the modern stuff on the pharmacy shelf that is actually quite toxic to the body and often doesn't clear the source. It just suppresses it. So when people use Tylenol all the time, they're like, oh, this fever just keeps coming back and I keep using Tylenol. I'm like, of course it does. Your body's trying to clear itself. So I think what you're talking about too, if somebody has a really, really high fever where they're starting to have convulsions or go delirious or seizures, we want to avoid that. But again, there's many home remedies that used to be well known to pull the fever down: cold cloths, Epsom salt lake bath, baking soda bath. Because I'm an acupuncturist, there's a lot of acupuncture points and meridians that I could do to drop a fever fairly quickly, but it doesn't suppress the body's healing ability. It actually enhances it. And then you manage it through that. So instead of white knuckling it, you'd kind of like toggle on, toggle off these different interventions to keep somebody in a respectable zone where they're not getting into dangerous territory, but you're not stopping the body's ability to heal it, because then later on, you're going to have to go and do a whole bunch of work if you suppressed it very heavily. And that's pretty much what we've been doing in our society here in North America for decades. So when we look at autoimmune disorders now, to me, part of that is because we've been suppressing things for decades. It's going to eventually lead to an epidemic of the immune system and the nervous systems of many, many people, like full on rebellion, full on like, no, we cannot suppress this any longer. There's nowhere else to put this stuff. But by that time, the body's compromised and it's out of balance. And then when they get sick, it's rough and they are white knuckling it. And maybe the traditional easy things that would normally work, they don't work anymore because the body's been messed with for so long it can't respond normally like it would to a baking soda bath or pine needle tincture, any of these things that would be very simple, very clear, very pristine. And even what I've noticed with homeopathy is that some of the remedies don't work the same anymore because there's so much toxicity and we've suppressed our natural innate response to heal that now the treatment is like treating the treatment. So when I'm working with patients, especially in the beginning, and autoimmune disorders are a big topic right now, I've got a masterclass coming up this weekend
I saw
specifically
that.
about that, is that most of them that I'm seeing, if they've had an autoimmune condition for a while, they've been on such heavy duty, potent, toxic medication. I have to like treat their treatment for months before we can even get into the condition of why this happened. And then, you know, maybe 5-6 months in, they're like, hey, my arthritis is not cured. Like, I know, I'm still treating the toxic treatment that you've been taking for years. And your body cannot respond to what I'm doing until we bring some balance back into that. And then we can start getting traction. And this is the hard thing for me as a practitioner. I want nothing more than to create symptom relief for patients as quickly as possible. Nobody wants to be in pain. I don't want to be in pain. I don't want my patients to be in pain. But I also don't want to mask things or cover it up, like, and trading that for the deeper health of the system long term. And that's often what we're doing is like short term gains of symptom suppression for really big, nasty consequences a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. When you suppress the immune system with a lot of the immunosuppressant drugs, in my view, you're asking for big trouble. But I know a lot of people feel stuck because they're like, well, what else do I do? And this is something I'm grappling with as a practitioner that works one-on-one with a lot of people. I can only see so many people that I am going to start training other doctors and other practitioners because I need to, you know, or at least that's how I feel right now, like kind of a responsibility to like, I got to get this out there more and more practitioners can think this way and gain tools because other people want to get results as well. I'm not the only one that is kind of obsessed with helping people resolve what's going on, but not just short term, long term. So we're talking about stacks of toxins for decades, not only your own life, the things that built up in your parents, the things that were suppressed in them, the things that your grandparents were exposed to, and that gets passed down the line. So quite often, and I think you and I have talked about this, and this happens in the spiritual communities, a lot of us like black sheep type personalities are like, how come I got to deal with all this shit through my like ancestral lines? Like, why is it me? Can somebody else help out with this? Like, why is it all coming through me? And, you know, I say that with humility because I feel that way at times too. And like, I'm human and I have a wonderful family. But when you really go back through the lineages, a lot of them did not have proper support. Mm-hmm. They didn't have safety. They were in survival mode so that they could live and get food and find another meal. And I have huge respect and reverence for that because I wouldn't be here without them. They survived so that I could be here. Mm-hmm. And that is really powerful for everybody to take a moment and just feel that gratitude and send it back through your lineage because you wouldn't be here without them. So the struggles they had, good, bad, ugly, everything in between, it allowed you to be here. And so that helps me look at some of this stuff a little bit better of like, well, I'd rather be here than not be here. Mm-hmm. And yeah, maybe they had a lot of hard times and a lot of toxic exposures and wartime and all these other things that were prevalent in humanity that our generation I've often felt as a bridge generation because now we have support that maybe we didn't have before. We're gaining tools, we're gaining understanding, and there's this really beautiful intersection of indigenous wisdom coming back and herbal wisdom coming back because people are unhappy with a lot of the medications and prescriptions they're getting because it's not working. Yep. So it's kind of out of necessity, but we also have access to more information than we've ever had at any point in history. So if you have that combined with some of the ancient like cultural knowledge of all kinds of different, all kinds of different cultures all across the planet, that is a really powerful like combination. That's a really powerful time that we're in, and probably the genesis of like Wild Remedies of it's herbals, it's mushrooms, it's these different things that are really healthy for the system because we know a lot about that stuff now and we've understood how we can actually use that in the body. So yeah, we're in a real age of synthesis of old and new. And we're starting to drop the things of like, yeah, we've tried that for 40 years. It doesn't actually work very well. Antibiotics 12 times a year, it might save you some infections, but it will bring more, and it brings more. And people get stuck in that loop, and then it turns into an autoimmune condition or something else. But we haven't been taught that those are actually completely connected. And there's a complete like causal chain. And the research now, even with Tylenol, we're picking on Tylenol a bit today, that it causes liver damage and leads to asthma and leads to all these different things that then you would need puffers for and steroidals. And that just compounds it even more. Meanwhile, nobody knew.
Yeah.
So it wasn't their fault. And I'm not even faulting doctors in this. They didn't know. They were just trying to help their patients feel better. And you go up to your doc and you're like, hey, I got fever, I got ear infection, everything. And it's like, hey, here's the tools I've been given. I've been told that these tools work pretty well. Yep. It kind of cleared things up for a little bit. Oh, 2 years from now, you have thyroid issues. Oh, all that bacteria and viral load got shoved into the thyroid and suppressed, or into the lymph nodes. Actually, it's disrupting your gut flora now. Now you kind of have IBS, and the doctor's like, well, here's maybe a medication or an intervention for that. And then it just compounds. And then you're
Antidepressants.
yeah. And of course your mood would be
For
off.
everything. For
Of
every
course.
fucking thing.
Yeah. Because the body's like, whoa, what's going on in here? So I know that was a long-winded answer, and just, kind of riffing that we have access to the older wisdom more now, and we have wisdom of like new research and knowledge. And that's where I'm kind of going in my practice these days, and working with people such as yourself too, is finding that intersection of both and using like the best of what we have available with technology and kind of cutting edge techniques and things, but still built on a foundation of how the body actually works. And for me, that foundation is Chinese medicine. There's Ayurvedic philosophies, there's constitutional philosophies. There's a lot of different ways to look at it, different maps of the body. They can all be effective if we're like listening to what the body actually needs. But first we got to get through, like in your case, layers of a lot of suppressed elements through medications and a lot of things that you've done through no fault of your own. And so essentially, even though you're not on a lot of those medications anymore, we've been still like treating the treatments and getting at some of the, bacterial or toxin layers, and then bringing them to the surface. And it's tough slugging sometimes. So that's why I've been, encouraging you. And you're like, Kevin,
You're reading me.
what's
I'll
happening,
message him on
man?
Instagram, and I'm just like, what the fuck? I just gained like 5 pounds overnight, and I'm so swollen, and my back hurts, and all of a sudden he's just like, okay, just chill. It's fine. You're not dying. You're healing.
But I can appreciate the mental emotional challenge around that, because it's new territory of like, wait, this means healing. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But it depends on what we're doing. But if I know what I've given you, and we know the stage of the process that we're in, it's like, Krysta, the lymph tissue has been working really hard. You're going to retain a little bit of water. You're going to have an increase in white blood cell count. You're going to have lymphocytes like moving through your system, because they're trying to clean you out. They're approaching the toxins that are being pulled out of the cells and pulled out of the tissue of wherever it's been suppressed. And so you can get a flood through the body, which is why we support the lymph and, salt baths and saunas and cold plunges to help like move that through as efficiently as we can. So you're not suffering too much while the body's actually going in the right direction. But because of what we've been taught, immediately think, I'm not going in the right direction. This can't be good. This remedy is making things worse. And it's like, on the surface level, it does look like that. But if you peel back the layers and dive under the waterline, if we could see that in real time, you'd see, oh, the body's really busy fixing this place up in here. It's renovating everything that has been damaged. And yeah, mid renovation on a home, I've been lots of homes and renos over the years. It looks pretty ugly sometimes. You're like, where's the kitchen sink? I can't even cook in here, What's happening? There's drywall dust on everything, but the finished product is so beautiful sometimes. And you're like, okay, depending on what stage you're in, it doesn't look put together. But after a little while, you start to see these new places of stability in the system where you can take on some imbalance, but the core of the body is actually still standing there solid. And it'll feel different. And, for me in this conversation with you directly, you'll start to feel that. And it may take a little bit more time, but there'll be like a deeper stability in your being that you start to rely on, and you start to feel a little bit more confidence. Because I also want to speak to a lot of the patients that I've worked with, you included, it's really easy to have lost confidence in your ability to heal,
Mm-hmm.
in the trust of your system. Like, my organs know what they're doing, because it sure seemed like they didn't years ago, and we got really off track, and
I've put so
retuning is
many
hard.
times over the years, like, my body's abandoned me. You know, I hate this vessel that I was given. I'm always going to be sick because, like, that's the experience, right? Like, it was just one thing after the other, like one symptom on top of the next, on top of the next, and so you feel betrayed
Yeah.
um, at some point. So that is for sure a practice for me on this journey.
Well, and that's really powerful. And even with the note of betrayal, if we just kind of work with that for a minute, it can definitely feel that way. And then if we zoom out and we take a little bigger viewpoint, we can often see that we've actually betrayed our natural rhythm somehow, and our ancestors. We lost track of how to tune in with nature and how to flow with the seasons.
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of our modern lives too, is, we talked about human design a little bit before jumping on the call, and like, how do we interface with our design of our true unique blueprinting? And
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be different for everybody. And this is part of the thing with, like, modern school as well. If you put all the kids in a desk and you teach them all the same thing and you teach them the same way, some are going to thrive in that environment and many are not going to thrive in that environment, because that doesn't actually match their blueprint of what they're here to do, or how they actually learn the best.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of homogenize so much of our life. And, this goes for lots of corporations and work and everything. It's like cubicles, a lot of structure that works really well for some, but doesn't work well for others. But you may have been convinced and taught, no, you need to fit in that structure, and you might feel ill and bring an illness forward and express that in your body because it is so not in alignment with your blueprint. But you haven't been taught what your blueprint is. You haven't been taught to follow the cycles of the moon and the sun and astrology and the leaves on the trees. And in darkness in winter, you should sleep more. And in the summer, you don't need as much. And people feel that naturally. But we have, with modern technology and lights and everything else, that we can bypass all of that stuff. And then suddenly we're disconnected from our inherent wisdom again.
Yeah.
And so that's a lot of what I love teaching in the clinic. And, when we get on podcasts like this, of encouraging people to reconnect with what they feel inside. And if we could, and I have to bypass this in my own system, and this is actually something I'm kind of facing professionally right now, is so much demand in the clinic. I can't keep up, and I'm perhaps losing touch with a little bit of like what I would actually do that day if I wasn't booked months in advance.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I feel like taking a week off that week because I'm feeling burnt out, or I'm feeling like I need 4 days in the mountains to restore my energy to its full vital capacity. But I've committed to seeing these patients 4 or 5 or 6 months ago. I can't bail on them. I can't abandon them. Can I? And these are the questions that I'm looking at, is like, how do I put myself in a position to be vitally healthy so that I can show up in the best way, while still
Mm-hmm.
being in the modern world of having schedules and commitments and honoring and wanting to be of service. And it's quite a dance. And so I'm questioning a lot of things right now in my own life of how do I want to keep moving forward, because some of what I'm doing right now, I can admit it's not sustainable for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I see so many people that are struggling and suffering right now. And it's like, oh, how can I not engage and help as much as I can? So I am changing already how I'm going to be helping. And this is where, master classes and bigger events are coming in, where I can reach a lot of people at once and be very effective and efficient with my energy and harness the energy of the group and have that energy propagate where it's not always one-on-one. And
Yeah.
so I don't think there's any perfect solution there, other than having more people understand how to listen to their body
Mm-hmm.
and, when to step forward and when to step back. And some of this beautiful wisdom of the plants and nature around us, that actually becomes more everyday and more commonplace. And it's slowly coming. I can see it, it's infusing back into culture a little bit. So that's encouraging. And it still seems like we have a little ways to go.
Yeah. I mean, we do, but it's accelerating, right?
It
So
seems that way.
everything that we've been through for the past few years has really highlighted a lot of the issues. And people are looking for answers. So many people are sick, and enough's enough, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And, it's really fascinating and inspiring to see the reclamation that's happening right now, right? So, like, even with myself, like the catalyst for the business that I currently have with Wild Remedies, it was to make big impacts in the world. Like, I wanted to create beautiful products, but also be able to use that as a philanthropic way to plant more trees and help the environment and all this stuff. I never thought along the way that I would discover the things that I've discovered through this platform, right? So it's been a vehicle for my own healing to dive so much deeper into herbalism itself and understanding the wisdom that nature provides us, because it's not just chemicals that we're getting from plants that we ingest to fix ourselves with. There's a whole energetic aspect and a spiritual aspect to it. And people are hungry for this shit. Like, they're waking up to it. Everybody wants to know more about psychedelics, and everybody's, jumping on the bandwagon of not drinking anymore and looking for healthier alternatives in so many different ways. And then, now we have this situation where we're going to have even more mass awakening of individuals who have had some major traumas over the past few years too, taking medical interventions, quote unquote, that are just wreaking havoc even more, right? And so now it's kind of prepared us to be in a place of needing to be able to help these people, and it feels urgent, right? It's like there's so much work to do. And so I totally understand. And I mean, I had this conversation with you the first time we met, we were chatting, and I was like, well, shit, like we need like 40 more of you,
Yeah.
and we need more people. But the good news is that as more people wake up, I think we're going to have a lot of, people who are in the medical profession who now need to completely switch gears, or are realizing that what they originally signed up for is something that they don't want to do anymore, and it's not in alignment. So I think we're going to see a really big shift in our healthcare, especially in Canada, as it just completely crumbles at this point.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of opportunity, but it is, it's wild, and it's so cool to also witness the merging of spirit and science. Right? It's like it's becoming more mainstream. People are more open to it. When we talk about homeopathy, like, and again, I want quickly your opinion on like how this works exactly. And from what I understand, it's a method of introducing, I was jokingly calling it like substance ghosts, right? That come into the body and help the body to just do this innate healing, right? It's like, that's the other thing too, is like just understanding. Once again, I mean, like the body is actually really miraculous. Like we cut our hand and the shit just like glues itself back together. Like with so many different, like if you actually think about how the body works, it is absolutely miraculous. And we are nature. We come from nature. When we watch the regeneration of just plants and forests, like you can try to decimate, but it will always grow back.
Yeah.
And we have that ability. The body wants to heal. But like you said, with all the suppression, all this toxicity, but we're kind of at this pinnacle, this point, this choice that we're all presented with right now. Are we going to heal? Or are we going to stay stuck? Right? And more people are ready to not be stuck anymore. And so we got a lot of work to do. And, this work is important. It's important for people to understand that this healing process isn't fucking comfortable. It isn't overnight, right? Like I'm going into month 4 and I am seeing changes, but it's still, every month I go in, I get my tincture. I feel like absolute shit for 2 weeks. And then I kind of go back to like maybe baseline, but it's like incrementally getting better. But I could be looking at an entire year before I'm seeing real results, right? Because for 20 years, I have been suppressing all of this illness in my body. So there is a lot to undo, right? And so we kind of have to let go of this take a pill to fix it and just not be uncomfortable ever, and just having patience through the process. And, you know, our society is so geared towards immediate results. I need to see it right now. And I completely understand. I get impatient with stuff all the time. But that is the practice, and that's the lesson.
Well, and timing wise, a couple things. I don't always see this to be true, because sometimes people get better way faster than what I anticipate, and sometimes it takes longer than what I anticipate for, you know, what I'm seeing in their cases. But one of the doctors I'd worked with years ago said, you can kind of count on at least a month of like deep treatment for every year that something's been going on in the body, you know, for
cool.
something that's been suppressed. So if you said 20 years,
Yeah.
I'm not going to say it's going to take 20 months, but it also depends on what level of resolution somebody's looking for. Some people are only looking for symptomatic relief, and they don't necessarily want to do the deeper dive and deeper work, or they're not ready, or they're not in a space where they can put a lot of time and attention on that because they're raising kids, or they're building a career, or they're doing any number of things that they feel in their own life is priority and important. I've been very clear for many years that health is always number one for me. And every once in a while, I still notice like, oh, I chose something that is not exactly healthy for me, but maybe it was healthy for somebody else. And maybe we can do that for a time. But I always kind of return back to naming health as the number one priority. And so when it comes to timing, some people accelerate through that timing curve and they'll heal faster, 8 months, 10 months. Some people, it's going to be 20 months or 24 months because of the 20-year track record. But also, I'm not aiming to just say, oh, that's symptom resolution and then you'll feel a bit better. I'm aiming to help the complete change of the cellular turnover of their entire body so that they don't need to see me again. So that they don't need to keep coming back and be on remedies and be on detoxes forever. We shouldn't really need to do that. And what we're noticing in modern society is the amount of toxins that we're exposed to. A lot of people are kind of needing regular detox all the time. And some of the doctors saying, you shouldn't need to do that. The body can do that. It's like, well, yeah, normally. But when you're dealing with higher than average levels of toxins coming at you from, a variety of angles, you're probably going to need to do more than what you would previously to get the same result. So there's a lot of things that are different and changing. And yeah, we're in arguably the biggest time of change I've ever seen in my life, individually, collectively, everyone's going through their own existential crisis in one way or another, whether they're aware of it or not. And we're all asking pretty big questions. And that is actually something I've been seeing in the clinic a lot, is having conversations like this, that people are questioning a lot of things. I think that's really healthy. Of what they're doing for work, what they're doing with their time. Are they spending enough time with their kids? And really coming back to what's very important, what's very valuable for them in their life, and starting to kind of be more, I guess, observant and taking a step back and taking a pause to see, where do I want to be in a year or 5 or 10? And it's not okay for me to work 80 hours a week and not see my friends and my family and everything, to then look back 20 years from now and be like, oh shit, I missed that. Because I've had that conversation with a lot of people too, and it's painful. It can be very painful to look back when they have a lot of regrets, or if they have a lot of, oh, I shouldn't have focused so much on these things that I just thought were important, and it turns out they're not, and I missed the things that were. So I think a lot of us are questioning, and we don't always have to have the answers, but even just asking the question is a really beautiful opening. And so I love your tenacity and your curiosity and your desire to learn, and then share what you're learning with everybody else so that they can actually benefit from that too. And I think that's what's led to this beautiful conversation where we can get into it, and we can get into the gritty bits of things that are working and things that aren't working, and that healing doesn't look like maybe roses every day, but you make progress all the time. The cells are going in the right direction, and then pretty soon you get a bit of momentum behind your system, and you have more good days than not good days. And that ratio keeps getting better. And then you notice if you do have a bad day, your body like responds the next day and you're out of it. And that's when you start feeling more confidence in the body again. And, just trusting, tuning in. You do lots of work on lots of levels. So I can see it. It's coming. Good job. Yeah. And I know it's hard. So
absolutely. Well, and I mean, this being hard, to be honest, this has been the easiest part of healing so far, right? Like meeting you, having that alignment, and then taking tinctures every day has been a lot easier than my initial paradigm shift 10 years ago and going through all of, the crazy food stuff, right? So like, oh my goodness, that's another big part of my healing too, because for me, it was like, I was quite overweight at one point, and, I'm sure a lot of that was inflammation, but also I had no understanding of nutrition, and I was treating my body like a complete garbage dump at that time in my 20s. And so I was eating junk food, and I had packed on all this weight. And so I started dieting a lot, and, it transformed my body in a certain way, but it also damaged my body a lot. And so this is, I mean, I messaged you not long ago, freaking out, being like, Kevin, I don't know, like I'm starting to have some thoughts and like some eating disorder stuff come up again, because it did create a bit of an eating disorder for me, because I was calorie counting for years. And, I had all this underlying stuff. I'm sure, I've got blood sugar sensitivity and all of these things from the inflammation and stuff in my body, and the thyroid from all of the things that we've been talking about with the suppression of symptoms. And to get my body to look a certain way, I had to put just Herculean amounts of effort of depriving myself of food and nutrients and exercising to the point of exhaustion all the time. And so in the past couple of years, maybe it's been a year and a half, 2 years, but since I've kind of stepped back from all the pharmaceuticals, the last couple that I've been on, I've also stopped the calorie counting. And so but that culmination has resulted in me gaining like 25 pounds, right?
Yeah.
Which is tough for somebody who is a perfectionist. And I'm the owner of a health company. And sometimes I don't feel like I look the way the owner of a health company should look at this point in my life. And I feel uncomfortable in my body sometimes. And I get frustrated, and I feel like, again, I'm being abandoned, or like the body's never going to change or look the way that I want it to. But it's interesting when I look back, there's this photo that I have of myself. And I remember at one point I had it as like a before and after, like part of social media somewhere. And I look great at that point. But when I think back to where I was, like actually mentally and physically at that point, I had just gone through like this super crazy 30-day Ayurvedic cleanse that just, oh my God, I don't know. I had 2 small bowls of khichdi a day. So like very, very small amount of food for over a month. I lost a shit ton of weight. I got completely obsessed with losing weight and the calorie counting and all of that stuff all over again. It completely fucked up my gut. It activated, like, I think more gluten sensitivity. My depression was so bad at that point. Like, I was actually a mess. So even though I looked, whatever, a certain way that I deemed to be good at that point, like, I was a fucking wreck at that point. And now I have a lot more calm and ease. Like, there's still frustrations, but I'm understanding that that's part of the healing process, and that, I'm trusting that my body will just land at the place that it needs to be, and to try to release the judgment around that.
Oh, good work. And you're speaking to really important elements that probably resonate with a lot of people that are going to be listening to this. And, when you rewind back, the original separation of self, with, food and dieting and needing to look a certain way, and then kind of forcing the body to comply with dieting or all these other things that sometimes people do that are really extreme. that doesn't have your body feel confident with you, because
Mm.
it can almost be like a bit abusive, and that might be a strong term, but then, the body kind of pulls back and is like, wait a minute, I'm not getting treated with love and respect and given like resources and support that I need. I'm being shoved into a corner and forced to comply. And,
Mhm.
that, it turns out, is not healthy for the psyche. It's not healthy for the nervous system, can put people in fight or flight, cortisol spikes, hormones get out of balance. And then the paradox is then we come back and we're like, body, what's the matter with you? And the body's like, are you kidding me? Look at what you've made me do. And
Yeah.
then it can be a journey that I think you're in right now, where you're slowly coming back together. You're
Mm.
slowly reintegrating the various versions of you, the different parts of you, and having love and compassion for all of the experiences that you've been through. And then it can be hard if somebody's putting on some weight, and, nobody wants to not look well or feel well. Like, we all want to feel healthy and strong and vital. But the way that we've been taught of, what health is in society, again, especially in North America, is very different than like deep sense of groundedness and vitality. And
Mhm.
those are things that I look for, well before weight, is the mental emotional strength of somebody, the spiritual strength of somebody. And when those are in alignment, the physical body often responds. And it's like, yeah, I can show up to this. I'm getting what I need. I'm being honored. I'm being served, and people talk about, my body is the temple, but we don't always embody that. We don't always treat that. And when I look back in my own system, I asked a lot of my body over the years. I
Mhm.
pushed it so hard at times, and it kept showing up for me. And I'm always like grateful that it made it through a lot of these things that I kept putting it in scenarios to. I abandoned myself, several
Mhm.
times in relationships, in work environments, and
Mhm.
worked and worked and worked. And my body's saying, hey, dude, like, we can't sustain this. And I'm like, yes, we can. Do
Shut
as
up.
I say.
Shut
Yeah,
up, body.
get back to work. I got to pay my rent. I got to do this. And
Yep.
there's these things that sometimes we need to get out there. And it's like the lion. You got to get out and hunt and eat, and then you got to rest. But we're missing the rest part in society. We're always hunting. We're always like looking
Mhm.
for these things that we think our bodies need, and most of the time our body just needs to chill and needs a bit of
Yeah.
rest. But that's what we've been taught not to trust.
Mhm.
So I can really appreciate for many people, and what you're experiencing right now, that trust isn't there yet, but it's coming.
Mhm.
It's coming a little bit at a time. And yes, weight can fluctuate up and down, and that can be part of the healing process. But you also have more support and more wisdom and more understanding at this phase of your life than you did 10 years ago and 20 years ago. And for me, the same. We're learning. And then as these come forward, the mental emotional pieces with like eating disorders or any of these things, that can actually show us, hey, there's a little bit of healing to work on here. That's why that's coming forward. And as you work on healing and integrating some of those pieces, the body comes a little bit closer together again. It's like, oh, you're listening to me. You're
Mhm.
hearing me. You're honoring me. I want some rest right now. And that can be counterintuitive when somebody's gaining weight and they're like, I got to go to the gym more and like drive this body harder.
Yeah.
And I'm often encouraging people to actually know it wants rest, it wants
Mhm.
kindness, it wants compassion. And when those things are met, your body shows up for you, and you can climb that mountain. You can, do massive hikes, and it'll perform because
Mhm.
you're giving it what it needs, and then it can show up for you even more. So if we're tuning in and listening that way, it gets better, better, better. And then all those parts that kind of got separated and kind of lost, and you know, in the forest somewhere else, and you don't know where those parts of you went, they start coming back together because you're shining that light and like playing that resonance through the frequency of your body, of you're saying, hey, over here,
Mhm.
come over here. I'm here. I'm listening. I'm ready. Come closer. Keep coming back to me. I know we maybe had some differences and you guys took off, and I can appreciate that, but it's time to come back together. And I'm going to segue that into homeopathy a little bit, because I know you wanted to touch on that too. That is the way I see a lot of the remedies that I build, whether you call them homeopathy or frequency or vibrational remedies. or homotoxicology remedies, I'm giving the body information. And I'm often reestablishing information that sometimes had been lost or forgotten, or the body stopped speaking the language of the body. And I'm reminding it by dropping in this information saying, hey, over here, this is the direction. And it's priming the system to be able to understand that. And it starts coming alive again. And you don't need a lot of substance for that. You don't need molecular weight for that. You just need frequency information. So I will build in information for the liver, for the kidneys, for the lymphatic tissue, for the endocrine system, wherever the body needs reintroduction of information, then it can start communicating again. And it's like, oh yeah, I remember that. I remember when we were functioning that way, but there's this stuff in the way. And I'll give the body information to say, hey, there's actually parasite, toxins going on over here, bacterial toxins, mold, fungal toxins. I'd like you to clear that away. And then the system's like, okay, well, you gave me the guidance, the map to do that. You gave me some resources to do that. I'm going to get to work on that. And then we'll check back in, and I'll check back in with patients, say, how's your body doing with that? And they'll say, hey, it was a little bit rough sorting that out, but I got it sorted out. Now I'm feeling better. What's the next step? And I say, well, now let's move on to the other organ systems that need more work. And sometimes we're doing a bit all at the same time. And but it's all getting kind of put back in order.
Oh my God. I want to work on a product line with you so badly. It's just, I don't know, man. Frequency is the fucking future. I'm so fired up about it. It's so cool. And like because I have like this in my human design, I have the investigator, right? So like, I want to know how stuff works. So the whole homeopathy thing, I'm like, how does it actually work? And what I think is happening, like it has to do with the structure of like water or something, right? Like there's the substances are somehow amplified by the memory of water, and what we're learning about water now is just like so friggin' fascinating. Do you know Veda Austin? Have you seen her work?
I don't. I was just going to mention The Fourth Phase of Water. That is a tremendous book, because there is amazing information happening and research happening on water, and that we don't even really understand past the first few layers of what's actually there, like
we
the
don't
memory,
understand the layers of anything. Like we're just figuring this shit out. Like it's happening now, but it's just like we got like a tsunami of like incredible information that's being revealed to us right now, and it's like so cool.
Yeah, it is so cool because I'm a 5-1 manifester, so I've got the investigator part, and this is where you and I think could jam. Is like, I want to understand everything, and I understand that that's maybe not always going to be the case, but I'm going to do my best to understand it. How does the body work? And so if we circle back to water and homeopathy, water holds frequency, it holds memory, and a lot of people are familiar now with Hidden Messages in Water. That's a great book as well, with a lot of the research that was done on ice crystals and how they form with like energy and words and frequency. Our body is doing that all the time. So that's why like the words we say, the words we hear, what we expose ourselves to has a legit effect on the water molecules in our body. And that then has a huge effect on our health. So
and
if we build
water, we're like, what? 80% water? We're water.
Yeah.
We're literally water.
Yeah. And we have many phases of water at any given time within our system. It's not one state, it's many states. And so when we come back to homeopathy, if you build a homeopathic remedy, it's frequency encoded in water or sometimes alcohol, or there's a bit of a mix just so it's, preserved and it'll hold up well over the long term, that can deliver as a vehicle of information into the system. It's a transducer. So we can build information without a lot of molecular weight through hyperdiluting particular substances. And the way that I've always envisioned this, and it changes over time in my own mind too, but let's say like you have a positive substance in the body, and I don't mean positive as in good. Like, when somebody says, oh, I tested positive for, could be any number of things, a nameless virus, for example. that there's something present in the system. Oh, I did a culture and it came back as strep, like it tested positive to strep, or I have a UTI and yeah, they did find staph bacteria or E. coli or something. Like it's there. It's a positive entity in the system. If you imagine like a spectrum of, maybe we'll just say on the left-hand side, we got a positive charge in the system. When you build a remedy to match that in a homotoxicology way, you're matching that frequency on the negative side. And so when that happens, it's like a battery. You have a positive and a negative, and then the current flows. When
Mhm.
you feed that very specific information into the system as data, then you can like pull that substance out of the system and essentially neutralize it, and the body will release it. And really, virtually, it could be in any tissue. It acts like
Mhm.
a resonant magnet, like an electromagnet. It'll pull that forward, like iron filings, and you have a charge, it'll suck all that stuff out. And so that's how we
Um,
detox everything.
we're literally seeing it. So my friend Maddie, who has been working with you, like, should one morning she'll message me and be like, hi, can you take a look at this picture of all of like the hives and shit over my, like, all over my body, all over her body. It's crazy. Like, I've heard, who was it? Actually, I believe it's Veda Austin. I've mentioned her a couple of times. She's coming on the podcast. She does really phenomenal stuff with studying water. But like, one of her experiences, I believe, had to do with, she was drinking like this amazing high frequency water, and glass from an injury, from an accident that she had years and years ago, just pushed its way through her hand.
Yeah.
It's like, wow.
The body is so capable. And so I know sometimes when I talk about toxins and, all the challenges of where we're at in society right now, to always remember the body capability is mind blowing. We
Mhm.
haven't even begun to understand what our capacity is. And, as a big fan of the Gene Keys, Richard Rudd, the author, talks about how like we are the technology that's untapped on this planet. Our
Mhm.
cells, our DNA, all of the vastness that we contain within this physical presence and our energetic vehicle, that's the technology that we're waking up and bringing online. And it'll sort that stuff out if it has like tools and resources, but these tools are inside. And
Mhm.
that to me is what homeopathy and acupuncture and some of these things that we can utilize, they enhance our ability to sort these things out. They shine the light, they provide a guide, they provide like a tuning frequency for our body to resonate with, to bring it back into alignment. And then it does, and it'll offload and detox all kinds of things.
Mhm.
And, for those that are Joe Dispenza fans, a lot of people that have been to his events, and I was actually planning to go to one, and I ended up not, but I know it's in my future. And talking to friends of mine that have gone, and there's this kind of known thing of they call it now the Dispenza influenza, is when you go to one of these events, not for everybody, but a lot of people will experience what they would imagine would be like a cold or flu type symptoms during or after,
Mhm.
because your body is now detoxing all of the stuff that was at a lower frequency. And when you go to a higher octave, the system has to unload that stuff. And it can feel, sinusy and congestive and maybe even a bit feverish as your body goes and cleans up all this garbage and then dumps it out. And then you come out at the actual embodied higher frequency. But we're
Mhm.
not taught that. We're taught the opposite. But that's an interesting phenomenon, right? And people are starting to
Mhm.
understand, hey, wait, this is okay. I'm not sick in the traditional way. My body's going through a bit of a healing. Some people call it a healing crisis, or an upgrade, as I like to call things. Is like, hey, it's upgrade time. And then we're reintegrating or integrating new material and different information. And then we can come to a higher frequency that then gives us more capacity, more
Mhm.
capabilities, more gifting, more intuition, all these things that we see coming online. And you'll probably
Mhm.
find that with like further work that we're doing together, that you'll get more clear and more grounded and more tuned into things that you didn't even notice before, but it's heightened.
Yep.
And that's kind of a fun outcome of getting the body healthy too.
Totally. Yeah. Well, I've definitely noticed more intuitive sensitivity to plants. So I know that is my gifting in this lifetime, but it's definitely becoming more sensitive in the past, I'd say, like couple of months, which is really cool. So the way that I communicate with plants is just, yeah, I mean, it's new for me, so I'm not sharing a lot about it yet, but it's, yeah, like I receive information in emotions and sometimes just even like touching trees. I've like received messages and stuff, and it's very cool. But again, it's like, yeah, coming online, figuring it out for myself right now. I will share all of the stuff with people as I start to integrate it more. But yeah, it's very cool. And I think that is a really cool thing for people to understand too, is like a lot of time we have a lot going on energetically right now on the planet, in so many different ways. And so it can really knock us down in energy. And so oftentimes if I'm having an off day, yes, I know there's chronic illness stuff that I'm working through, but oftentimes too, I'm like, maybe it's something else, you know? I notice for myself, I get a lot of, it's kind of like tuning. I hear it. So it's like my ear does this weird high frequency pitch thing, and then it feels full and it releases. And what I've been told through guidance is that it's literally like changing the channel, right? You're changing the channel. And sometimes you can feel sick. There's like all of these things that, you know, if we haven't been exposed to that spiritual side yet, might seem like, you know, a pathology of some sort, but it's actually something else going on, which is a little bit off topic, but I think it's really fascinating. And I think
It
more
is.
people are going to be a lot more receptive to this kind of information as we move along on this crazy timeline that we're on right now.
Quite an adventure. Yeah, we're both showing up. It's
Oh my gosh.
powerful time.
Do you have a hard stop? Because I know we're a little bit over time right now, but there's still something else that I wanted to talk to you about.
Yeah, I'm happy to keep
You're
going
good?
and
Okay.
dive in however we
We're
need
doing
to.
Joe Rogan style today. So much to talk about. I love it. Um, okay, so one thing I wanted to bring up, I think now is the time that we need to start having these conversations more. So anybody who listens to the podcast, I'm pretty sure you know my stance on what's kind of gone on in the past 3 years. So some of us just kind of knew that what was happening wasn't right. And you were also one of those people. And I think especially people who have just gone or have been in the medical system and have come to these realizations and understand that there is a completely different, there's a whole other realm and a whole universe out there that is, you know, largely unexplored, becoming more explored, but ignored a lot by the general society. And we saw a train wreck coming, you know, a mile away. And I know myself, I've been screaming from the top of my lungs all over my social media, probably look like tinfoil hat, all of the things. But like, I knew that what we were about to do to humanity was going to be very, very bad. And so now here we are at a point where I think more and more people every single day are starting to question what they signed up for. And I mean, the fact is the majority of people took a medical intervention that maybe they did want to take and were really excited about, you know, and for many reasons, it seemed like a great thing to do. I know I even considered it at one point, just due to social pressure and kind of just questioning my own intuition. You know, definitely glad that I didn't do that. It was the best, you know, decision I've ever made in my life. But the fact is that the majority of people did take this intervention, and now we are seeing major side effects, major side effects. And I mean, most people have to know somebody. If it's not them, it's somebody that they know that has either died suddenly, or, you know, we're seeing heart attacks and strokes and these insane blood clots that are coming out of people, and neurological issues and autoimmune and sudden aggressive cancers. And like the list just goes on and on and on and on. And I think now it's, you know, because for the past few months, it's been a lot of like raising the alarm, like, hey guys, maybe don't do this, okay? Like, we really don't want to go down this road, right? And then most people are like, well, no, we're really scared, and this is what public health is telling us to do, and we have trust in the system still because they haven't gone down the path that, you know, some of us have, and have realized that there's a lot of corruption in that system. So I think there's a lot of folks out there that are probably searching for some answers because now they may be in a predicament where their health has been compromised, or they have people in their community that they're worried about. And we need to start providing some solutions for folks because, you know, hearing over and over again, well, you know, you did it to yourself, you signed up for this thing, and now you have to deal with the consequences. Like, that's not, like, we need to have unity and we need to figure this out together.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd love to hear kind of what you're seeing, and if you're seeing like what people can be doing who are looking to detox and heal and maybe pass on some information to somebody who may be looking for solutions.
So I am seeing pretty much everything you mentioned that I was really concerned that I would see. And I've said this to many patients, you know, we hate to be right about some of these things or some of the predictions, especially when it's not pretty.
Nobody wanted to be right. It wasn't like, hey,
Yeah.
I just want to totally ostracize myself and, you know, ruin my reputation or whatever it is. It's like we were genuinely concerned and we knew that this was going to happen. And it's not like a pat ourselves on the back for being right. We didn't fucking want to be right. Like, this is a living nightmare, right? Like, it's scary.
It's pretty big and it's vast, and even just to tap into the edges of these places, you can feel how big this is. And I'm just seeing, you know, people in the clinic over and over again that are struggling with a variety of things, and they're struggling with things they've never had before. And that narrative is happening pretty much daily with a lot of the patients that I'm working with, that weird stuff is going on, weird symptoms is going on, and they haven't been able to get any answers. And when we get to some of these deeper levels, there's some common denominators here that a lot of people have been exposed to experimental elements that have now been put into their bodies. And yeah, it's a hard space to be in sometimes in medicine right now for, you know, regardless of where you're at within it and how you feel, everything is new. Things are different. The things that you could count on and rely on are changing so rapidly now because we're in such a massive evolutionary spike that it's hard to keep up with at times of what does the body need and what do people need and what is being effective. And thankfully, there's a lot more research coming out now with a lot of different doctors and other practitioners that are finding things that are effective. You know, I've got a bunch of different things that I do that are fairly custom that I've seen to be quite effective with, you know, reversing and shifting damage that's occurred and, you know, different symptoms that are really stubborn and are not responding to other types of treatment. Then we get in there and kind of roll our sleeves up a little bit more and try and clear some of this stuff. And admittedly, like, I don't know what the outcome is going to be with different types of cases. Whereas in the past, I felt like I could be more confident of, hey, we do this, we do that, we follow these types of sequences, you're going to get better. And so it's not that I don't believe people can heal, but there is a learning curve here that's going to be maybe taking a bit of time to really kind of wrap our heads around and increase frequency in somebody's system that's been pulled in incredibly low. So, you know, there's a lot of, I actually mentioned it earlier on this podcast, pine needle tincture has been shown to be pretty helpful for a variety of, you know, toxin exposures in the body, you know, natural and maybe not so natural. And so a lot of people are experiencing some success with that. And it's pure, it's beautiful. You can get a hold of it. We've got some at our clinic. Sometimes it's a little hard to get, but it's quite helpful.
What about tea?
Like just pine needle tea?
Yeah. Cause I mean, like, that's so easy to make. Like, I made a decoction of it for like cocktails over the holidays. Like, it's not like we have so much amazing medicine just at our fingertips.
That's I think that's a beautiful point, is we do have so much available. If we're willing to look and maybe do a bit of reading and research, the information's there. It's not that the information's not available. I know a lot of people have talked about using zeolite to
Yeah,
help
I was going to
detoxify the
mention that.
body. That's become
What the
more
hell is that?
popular. It's like a structured clay, and that's not even
Okay.
really the right way to say it, but um, it acts in a similar fashion, even though I think the mechanism slightly different than activated charcoal that's been popular for years, where it'll help kind of bind toxins and like scrub the system out a little bit and help
Mhm.
pull some of the things that have become lodged or stuck in the body. And again, we're still learning about some of the new elements of how our bodies are responding to things that are different and things that our bodies have never seen before ever. And I think some of the old school way of looking at this still holds true, that if you give your body what it needs, when you feel that resonance or that pull, whether it's time in nature, lake, waterfall, fresh air, that will always give the body tools for it to use its wisdom. Just like your friend that, the hand, the skin, push the glass out when she
Mm.
was coming into frequency that was higher, the wisdom of the body will do it. And
Mhm.
so I don't think we even need to understand necessarily some of the deeper layers and the mechanisms behind what has happened for a lot of people in their system. But what we can understand is the body can find a way, if we're eating well, taking in good quality water, and doing things that can increase our frequency, breath work, meditation, inner child work, all these different things that we often dive into, going into the darker areas within our system and then liberating that. It frees up a whole bunch of new energy for our healing.
Mhm.
And there's other homeopathics that I think will be pretty helpful into the future. Some of this stuff, I'm not really ready to name it yet because I'm doing my own research and I don't want to jump the gun on something that I think is promising and then it's not. And so you can believe that I'm always out at the drawing board and in
Mhm.
my own little version of a lab, my little space there where I'm trialing things and thinking about things. And I am, sitting up at night with, a fire crackling, just really thinking about the things I've seen in the clinic through the day and through the week and over the last 6 or 8 months, and asking myself these questions. What do we need now? What is presenting itself in nature that could be really, really useful, because nature often provides a cure for everything,
Mhm.
and our bodies are nature. And I've actually had dreams where I'm working on building different remedies and things, and wake up
Mm.
in the morning and jotting notes down. And so I'm working on it too. I'm working on it in my own way. And I know a lot of other doctors are out there working on it, other practitioners, other, soul coaches and things like that. There's many ways to approach it. And what I
Mhm.
often tell people is, if you feel the pull to work with somebody, you feel a call to explore something, research something, connect with somebody, there's a reason for that, and to trust that there may be a solution there. Because the other thing is, the solution that works for one person is not necessarily the one that works for somebody else.
Mhm.
Our cells behave differently, our frequency is different, and that's a beautiful thing. So it's not always going to be across the board. And even products that I may develop in the future, it doesn't mean that they're going to be for everybody. And I think about that too, of having slightly different nuanced versions of a similar product to really kind of meet as much as possible without seeing everybody in person, that it'll still meet somebody where they're at with the way that they show up in the world, with the way that their body's designed and their blueprinting, that they need, version 1 versus, version 2 or version 3. And then that can actually meet them where they're at, and it'll offload or clear or detox what they need. So,
Mhm.
um, part of me feels like I didn't really answer that question
Mhm.
as clearly as I'd like, but I'm also just kind of hitting the pause. Is I'm working on some things that I think will be really helpful, but I'm not sure yet.
Mhm.
And I know that's happening in many other places and many other little pockets of the world and clinics and things, that we're all working on it. And I think this is actually the strength of humanity, that there's a lot of solutions that are going to come forward even more. We're just at the tip of the iceberg. Like, we're just getting started with understanding things at a new level, but it's coming. So source the things that are around you. And it's often the things that are the most simple can hold the most potency as well. So not to overlook that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think it's also important to recognize too, is that your frequency is important, right? So, if you did take the medical intervention and it's something that you're really stressed about, being stressed about it is not going to help. I don't think, everyone necessarily has like a ticking time bomb inside of them. I think, from all of the research and all of the doctors and the thousands and thousands of hours I've spent researching all of this over the past 3 years, what it seems like is there are so many different variables as to why some people are getting sick and why aren't. There's, hot lots, right? So just lots of products that went out that had like literal shit, like shrapnels of metal and stuff because it was just made too quickly or quality control wasn't there. There's elements like that. So many different variations between all of these different drugs. Like, do you remember at one point on the news, they were just like, oh, it's totally fine to mix, like a Pfizer with a Moderna and whatever. And it's like, what do you mean? Like, it's okay to mix, like, first of all, you guys don't even know what the fuck this is. And now you're just telling people to like mix the brands. And like, it was just, oh my God, it was just so absolutely mind blowing. Oh my God, all of the trauma that we've experienced. Like, it's insane. But yeah, I mean, what I'm trying to get at is that frequency is important. And, for those who are in this process and now having to go through a healing experience, that's something that our higher selves have chosen. And it's for a reason, right? It's the same reason that I've been on this healing journey for my entire life, which is very challenging, but has also garnered a ton of wisdom and has a purpose. So yeah, I think it's all happening on multiple levels for lots of different reasons. But I just really feel for humanity. And I think so many of us want to be in a position to help. There's a lot of healing that needs to happen on lots of different levels because there's been so much trauma that's been created. But more and more people are going to be needing help, right? So I'm just so glad there's folks like you that are looking for solutions. Fuck, man. It was so funny. Like, I literally messaged you the other day, Dave, about pine needle. So do you remember? I was just like, I need to make this powder and I need a machine. Can you recommend a machine? That's really interesting.
Yeah. These things always come around. I think the image of a lighthouse comes to mind, and I've had conversations with others about this too. And the ships that are sailing around can decide if they want to heed the advice of the light of, saying, hey, there's a shore right here. There's rocks right here. And the lighthouse, I don't think judges like who heeds that information and who doesn't, but they stay a lighthouse nonetheless. And that's a vision that comes to mind for me, to do my best to be a lighthouse and, share things and, be strong and stable in that and not judge the decisions that everybody else is making, and just kind of hold that energy and hold that compassion and trust that, we all have our own process here. Even if my mind doesn't understand that, and even if my mind likes to judge other things, that there's always something bigger going on kind of beyond my own understanding, and knowing that is there allows me to kind of stay as grounded as possible in some of this stuff. So yeah. And I do think, like I said at the beginning, the darkest areas are often hiding the most amount of light. And so as we go into some of these things and it looks really intense and it looks really nasty, that the amount of light and progress that we are on the cusp of revealing as humanity is immense. And that's inspiring, a lot of us too, to just, keep on rolling. So.
Amazing. Well, so everyone listening, just stay tuned. There's more to come. Okay. The last thing that I want to talk about before I let you go is the work that you're doing right now around the courses with autoimmunity. Let's chat about that.
Yeah. So part of I think the inspiration is because of what I've seen in the clinic over, many, many years, but especially
Mhm.
increasing in frequency at a kind of an alarming rate, is I want to get more information and teachings out there for giving people solutions and sharing ideas and wisdom, hopefully, on a lot of the things that I've learned over the years on how to sort this stuff out,
Mhm.
and to point people in directions of things that maybe they've never thought of, they've never considered before, things that haven't really been talked about, things that I haven't really talked about publicly too much, and maybe one-on-one in the clinic here and there, that it feels like it's time for me to share more. And partly because of the demand, I can't reach everybody in the clinical setting that way. And so how are other people faring with this, and giving more information and giving tools and resources, I think will be really valuable. So that's
Mhm.
where building courses, creating more kind of group spaces for healing and making it more accessible, both like time wise, financially, all the above. If you can't get in to see me, and I'm really, really booked up in the clinic. And again, I'm so grateful for that. So there needs to be some other avenues to, come into contact with healing and come into contact with some of the information. And so I think that's a vehicle that I'm going to use into the future, is more training. And I'm going to be training, like I said, other practitioners and things as well, because I think it can happen on both sides, like sharing with the public and sharing with the people that are treating the public as well, and have accessibility. So kind of have both
Mhm.
irons in the fire on those fronts to bring a lot of this forward.
Mhm.
And um, this is where I love technology. It's easier to connect with people through vast distance and time, and record some of this stuff and make it available as courses for purchase in the future, and live courses and Q&A. And so yeah, there's a lot of this stuff coming out the next few months. I'm going to have like paid workshops and things. I'm going to have more free stuff available. I'm going to be doing all of it really just because I want to get it out there. And
Mhm.
yeah, hopefully we can make an impact doing that and bring a lot of value to people. And in-person retreats and things and bigger events is stuff that's in the future too. So should be
Mhm.
a big year. I'm excited to show up, and this is where I feel most inspired too. So yeah, thanks.
Yeah. No, that's wonderful. Yeah, and I'm glad that you chose autoimmune because I mean, autoimmunity is literally the body attacking itself, right? Which is not what the body wants to do or is designed to do. So we have a lot of things in the environment that are scrambling us.
Yep.
And yeah, it's really too bad to see because we're just seeing more and more complex conditions that just didn't even exist, 100 years
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah.
And it's touted as like just normal, right? Like, oh no, these things actually always did exist, and here's another drug for it. Like, it's just insane. It's insane.
Yeah. Well, we're going to bring a lot of this information forward in terms of that adaptation that we can kind of meet, and really provide solutions for all these things that are new and are changing. And yeah, the ingenuity and the inspiration of mankind. We're still here on the planet for a reason, and I'd like to see it continue. So I'm going to do my part as best I can. Yeah.
Yep. Awesome. Okay, so anybody who wants to sign up or connect with you, where can they go?
Generally, yeah, website and Instagram are probably two of the best places. And it's just Dr. Kevin Preston, drkevinpreston.com, and same handle on Instagram. And I'm not on there tons, but that is a way to track us down for sure. And stay tuned with what we're creating and offering. And yeah, we'll see everybody down the road.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here today. You're just, I don't know, so glad I met you. Such a gift. And I love that I get to have these conversations with you and get this information out to people. It's exciting. I don't know. There's just so much synergy and all of the things. I hope everybody who is listening right now is inspired, right, to improve their health, to look at a new way of healing and moving forward and share it with people. Share it, guys. We need to get this information out. It's so, so, so important. So make sure to connect with Kevin and yeah, we'll catch you all on the next episode. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. Yeah, many blessings.
Thanks so much for sharing your time and energy with us today. We'd love to hear your feedback on how our podcast has impacted your life and are also open to suggestions for new and interesting topics. Please leave your comments with a quick review to help us grow this magical community of wellness warriors and light workers. Every month, we select one lucky reviewer to win our big Magick box, containing all 3 of our beautiful Magick Lattes. To connect with us further, check us out on Instagram at wild_remedies. Thank you again, and see you at the next episode.